Hi guys, I hope you're all well. As promised, I'm going to continue reading our class book, Hamish and the Worldstoppers by Danny Wallace. Before we broke up, we found out that Hamish was a little boy who kept experiencing the whole world stopping and him being the only person that could move around during the pause. Later on in the story, we found out that there was also a little girl who could also move around in the pause, but we haven't seen much of her yet. In the chapter that we read before we broke up, some creatures had been coming to Earth during the pause and were taking people away. And in the last chapter, Hamish witnessed his next door neighbour's dad been taken away by the creatures during the pause. And one of the creatures had also noticed that Hamish could move during the pause. He also noticed something strange when the creature noticed a sunflower. So anyway, I'll carry on. And this chapter is called The Morning After the Night Before. If there was one thing Hamish could be certain of, it was this: the time to act was now. The trouble was, he didn't really know what action he should take. How was a 10-year-old boy supposed to ward off a horde of marauding monsters plundering through Britain's fourth most boring town? Having spent the night thinking about it, Hamish was beginning to feel his PSK might be a little lacking. There's only so much he could do with a chomp and a small whistle, and he suddenly felt vastly unprepared for what now seemed like could be an apocalypse of some sort. He'd had an idea, though. It was of the most minuscule variety, but it was still an idea. The thing had acted very weirdly last night when it spotted the sunflower on his windowsill. It had definitely flinched. Were they allergic? Or did it just not know what one was? Whatever the reason, Hamish decided some sunflower seeds might come in handy. He'd plant them in the garden. Maybe he'd plant them all over Starkley. So he found an old matchbox in his dad's desk marked Belasco, poured out some of the matches and added a handful of Farmer Jarmer sunflower seeds from the back of his mum's baking cupboard. He shoved the matchbox in his back pocket and immediately felt better. Between that and his PSK, he at least had some things covered. But there had to be more he could do. Maybe he could alert the media. Then he remembered the Starkley Post only came out on Mondays. He'd have to wait days for the story to break. What if he told the army then? But what general in their right mind would believe a story like this? He'd be lucky if they sent a couple of scouts and a brownie to secure the area. What's more, the pauses seemed to be happening with greater and greater frequency, and Hamish had no idea what the pattern was. There had been Saturday in town, for example, and then when he went to get eggs, and then there was last night. Were the pauses picking up speed as well as lasting longer? His dad always said that every good adventurer needed a guardian, someone to look over them. He would tell Hamish over boggle and hot chocolate that a good guardian was like a good shepherd. Every sheep needs a shepherd, Hamish, he'd said. Well, his dad wasn't here anymore, and Hamish didn't have a guardian or a shepherd or anything like that. Unless he plucked up the courage to tell Jimmy. He was always playing video games with zombies and evil bat monsters and stuff. Maybe some of that had paid off. But James, was in a bad mood that morning because Felicity Gobb still wasn't returning his calls. Hamish had seen over his shoulder at the table that he'd been working on a brand new poem to try and win her over, entitled simply, Felicity. Oh, Felicity, Felicity, your name's like electricity. I mustn't be pernickety, but marry me, Felicity. Underneath Felicity, Jimmy had scribbled out the words toxicity, Sicily, polygamy, and growth industry. as he'd had trouble making them rhyme. Nevertheless, Hamish felt that Jimmy's poetic instincts had been spot on. Felicity was a much nicer name to rhyme with than Gob. Felicity Gob eats corn on the cob, and that was as good as it got. Now, if there are any grown-ups reading this, and there'd better not be, it's very important you understand. Kids sometimes need to skip school. Only occasionally, but sometimes there are vital things that need to be done and they're not going to do themselves. Hamish had never skipped school in his life. He had a feeling it might be illegal. That said, he also knew that desperate times call for desperate measures. "So, yeah, bye, Mum," he said at the doorway nervously. I'm just off to school. School's where I'm going. I'm definitely going to school now." Okay, said his mum, distracted as usual. She was clearing away the breakfast plates, trying to find her phone and fix her hair and get her bag ready for work, all at the same time. "Have a nice day, chicken." "I will, Mum," he said, blushing. "And you have a nice day too." "Nice day? I wish," she said. "Complaints are through the roof." She pointed at the laptop on the kitchen table. The big red graph she was always looking at showed a long rising line with little sad faces all along it. "I don't know what's happening this year, but that graph is the bane of my life, Hamish," she said, shaking her head. "The town clock seems unfixable, and Mr. Slackjaw's lost yet another moped." She picked up the television remote and held it to her ear, thinking it was her phone. "Great," she said, annoyed. "And now my phone's gone out of battery." Hamish saw this was his moment and started to creep away, making an innocent face. "Oh, and Hamish?" Curses. Had she seen through his lies about going to school? But whatever it was his mum was about to say, she stopped right there. Because over Hamish's shoulder, she had spotted something. There was a police car outside the Ramsface residence. Mrs. Ramsface was leaning on the door frame, dabbing her eye with a handkerchief, while the policeman had his hands on his hips and was shaking his head, puzzled. "Oh," said Hamish's mum. Hamish had a strong urge to run up to the policeman and tell him that Mr. Ramsface had been taken in the night by some monsters with a sort of lizard horse. And then he realised how that might sound. He needed more information first, and he knew where he might get it. It was time for Plan 1, Part A. And that's where I'm going to leave you for now. I hope you all stay safe and keep well, and I'll check in soon with the next chapter. Bye.